Okay, this is going to be my hangout on theories of knowledge. A lot of times, how do we know things? Can we know things for certain? Do we have to know things for certain? Those are questions that often come up in the great debate community. And so here we are. We're going to talk about them. There's lots of different theories of knowledge. It has to do with beliefs and truth. And that's where we're going to start from there. What do any of you guys know anything about theories of knowledge?
Just a little bit.
I know a little bit about justified true belief, reliably produced belief. I would love to know more about the other ones.
Frankly, I just want to hear Cliff talk about it. So there's internalists, there's externalists, there's foundationists, there's coherentists, there's foundherentists, there's reliabilists, there's Buddhist, whatever.
Coherentist and
yeah.
And then you said that one already.
Yeah. Oh. Well, yeah.
What was the correspondence one called?
Well, correspondence.
You just got the correspondence theory and knowledge.
Shut up, it's time for Cliff.
That's the theory for truth. Go, Cliff, let's do this.
Especially foundherentist, what the hell is that?
I thought we were shutting up and letting Cliff talk.
Yeah, shut up already.
We are tossing you the ball, Cliff.
That's insightful.
Well, the first question I would ask is, what is the value of knowledge, and why would you want to have it over to belief?
Knowledge over belief, why would you want to have it?
Yeah.
Isn't belief is a subset of knowledge, right? Or am I thinking
other way around?
Yeah, you have it backwards.
Yeah. Knowledge is a subset of belief. Well, intuitively, it's always been seen that if you say you believe something, it seems to me that people have always seen that as less. That's more of a hesitant claim. Whereas if you say you know something, there's some sort of strength to saying that. But that's just intuitively.
Well, and I think I would want my map of reality to match the terrain as best I could.
Which is a correspondence theory of truth.
Well, I'm saying that's why I would want it over a belief, is I think I would want to have that match as best I could, which I could have a belief that didn't necessarily match it.
Right, so like just ask you this question, right? Like say you went to a doctor and there's something wrong with you, and the doctor proposes a treatment. And so you ask the doctor, right, so is this treatment going to work? Would you prefer that he said, well, I believe it's going to work, or would you prefer that he said, I know it's going to work?
No, well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, but that's just a rhetorical. It's just a rhetorical game. It doesn't have anything to do with anything.
No, what's relevant to the question is, like, knowledge is a subset of belief, right? So, like, one of the things Darwin says is he'll say, well, no, you're just running a definition game. Like, I have a definition of knowledge, and it's the right definition of knowledge. And any definition that you use, which is not mine, isn't a meaningful definition. But why are you, when you're defining knowledge as some subset of belief, you're just making a particular subset. What is the value of the subset that you choose over any other particular subset? Because that's all they are.
And I think he was just trying to introduce it, not necessarily give like some sort of rhetorical argument for why you want to say knowledge instead of just belief. Earlier I mentioned that intuitively it sounds more persuasive when you say you know something versus you believe something. Beliefs I often associate with things like faith or like a religious perspective. Hey, Felipe.
I think in regular talk we use knowledge and belief totally differently. I think that when someone says, is that something you just think or do you know it? They're really asking about somebody's internal degree of certainty. Mm-hmm. And that's nothing like what we are meaning to talk about in this hangout, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, if I said if my theory of knowledge were that knowledge is the beliefs that contain the word "the," why is that not a good theory of knowledge?
Doesn't help
Knowledge is the belief that
differentiate or explain anything.
Yeah, right.
contains.
And like any belief that contains the word "the" in it,
Good for what?
right?
Like, what do you mean good? There's no such thing as good. What do you mean good? Why is that not good?
Maybe he means useful.
Well,
Is it something I
it
said?
would be an empirical fact if it's useful.
Right. Yeah, that's the
Right, but
distinction I
you're
was going to make
presupposing
between belief
something
and
else,
knowledge.
What's up,
Presupposing.
Cliff?
Hold on, what?
Right. So why wouldn't you take that as a theory of knowledge? Why wouldn't you say, okay, right? So that's what knowledge is.
It's a semantic dispute. Not interesting.
What's not interesting?
To just, I could call knowledge 3 pineapples arranged counterclockwise. Like, it's just a definition, right?
Right, so he's trying to get at what is it that we all are wanting when we want to use the word knowledge or know.
Right. So when you have these different
Wait, I have a
theory of-
question though. Wait,
Sure, go
one
ahead.
second, I have a question. Would pineapples arranged counterclockwise look different from pineapples arranged clockwise?
Well, how would you
Completely
know
different.
that?
They're totally different.
Yeah, pineapples arranged.
Why?
Yeah, pineapples arranged in a clock-like formation. Fuck you, Jack.
Well, at least we came down to one thing in this hangout. We already got it out of the way, so now it could just become worse and worse.
Well, what kind of a distinction between
So I
something
think he's
being
hinting at
only
justification.
something that I have access to, and knowledge being something that you have access to?
Say that again.
Yeah.
So what would the difference between me saying I believe being something that only I have access to evaluate, right? Where knowledge would be something you would have access to as well.
Or you mean to say that when you say that you know something, it means that it's possible that I know it too. But if you say you believe something, it's not necessarily the case that it's possible that I could believe it?
It's not necessarily the case that I could that I could validate that for you if it was just a belief I had. It's not something you would have access to.
Yeah, so I think you're hinting at justification there.
You could have your own belief about it, but you couldn't ever have my belief about it, where we could share the knowledge about it.
I'm not sure how you would even, I don't know what it would mean to validate the fact that you have a belief.
Is he just...
I'm not sure. That's actually a side point to what I was making.
So
if I hold a belief, right?
Right.
And how I differentiate that from knowledge, or how you would differentiate that from knowledge, would be that this is something that you would have access to. You have no access to my belief. I mean, I can tell you about it, things like that, but that's not access actually to my belief.
Yeah, but it sounds
where
like you're saying...
where maybe I'm just not coming across clear, but where I would say that knowledge, this is something that you or Joe or or Josh or Jack, everybody would have access to it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is basically that you could form any belief completely independent of me. But it is possible that the fact that if you came to knowledge, then I should be able to come to the same knowledge. But necessarily, I wouldn't need to be able to come to the same beliefs that you have.
Right.
But I should be able to come to the same. Okay, I can see that.
That was way better worded than my mess.
Right. So why would that matter as a way of subsetting beliefs? Why would that be a particularly valuable way to do it? Because that's all we're doing, right? Any theory of knowledge is particularly taking the set of beliefs that you have, drawing a circle around a particular subset, and saying this subset of beliefs are the ones that I'm going to call knowledge. So what is the particular use in any one subset over another? Why would you do any one subset?
That's justification and truth.
Right, so why would it matter that they're justified and true? Why would you use that to say these are the things that I'm going to call knowledge?
Well, one would be the claim of, I guess would be claims about how reality is, and one is about how you think reality could be or is, how you think it is.
It's inbuilt into the idea of justification that they're useful. So you're asking like why something that's useful is useful.
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's lots of theories of knowledge that don't rely on justification.
I would like to learn those at some point.
Would it be kind of I guess too base if we like all kind of talk about what is the perspective on truth, because there are different perspectives on truth as well. There's a deflationary I guess view of truth. There's also just coherentists, and then there's foundationalists, right? And even pragmatic.
Revelatory, pragmatic.
Yeah. Would we be bogged down in something if we talked about that aspect and then we moved on to knowledge specifically, or do you guys just want to go straight to knowledge?
Well, no, can I ask Cliff to answer the question he was asking us before we move on, if he had an answer for it? Do you mind? I thought the way he was questioned, I thought maybe he had some other answer or explanation for it.
No, I think like that's at the heart. And when you're talking about theories of knowledge, that's all you're doing is you're defining a particular subset of beliefs. So when you're looking at, like Helena started off and she was talking about correspondence theories of truth and justified true beliefs as an account of knowledge, and she felt they were problematic. So if you draw a circle around that subset of beliefs, she was like, well, I feel this is problematic to subset that. So the interesting question is, well, why do you feel it's problematic? Like, all the subsets are essentially arbitrary, right? Like, you could draw subsets around anything. So what appeals to you about one over the other one? Like, what are you trying to get out of that subset? Why is that subset interesting or not interesting?
Well, I like not having to be able to have an internal justification, because to me, there are people and other sort of non-human animals that I really think know things, and I don't want my definition of knowledge to have to be that the subject knows he knows, because I feel like I've got empirical evidence of people knowing things without knowing that they know them. That's one thing. Also, having truth wrapped up in a definition makes it sort of purely theoretical, even if it really is a better definition than anything else we've got. I can't do anything with it, right? So maybe it is the best definition, but so what? So we've captured what we really mean when we use the word knowledge, but so what? So those are some of my reasons.
Well,
That's
would
one of
you
the
add
reasons
clarity?
why I preferred what Bert was saying, although Bert had slightly different reasons, right? He wants to go just with reliably produced belief, because he believes his father, who has Alzheimer's, reliably produced his beliefs at a time when he didn't have memory problems, and now he still holds those bits of knowledge, if you will, even though he can't account for them and doesn't even know he knows them anymore. Nonetheless, he knows them, and so that's why Bert prefers, reliable belief as opposed to justified true belief.
Well,
I don't think you have to be able to.
Don't we usually cut things off and categorize them and sub-categorize them like that for clarity and usefulness? Just that simple?
That's one point, right? Like, you can just say, well, it's a semantic thing. So when I say knowledge, I mean this particular subset of beliefs. But there's usually a goal, right? Like, there's some reason why you're making that particular subset that what you're going to talk about.
Yeah, I just explained my motivations. I don't think I explained any decent goal.
Right. But, like, I didn't quite get, like, why do you think you wouldn't want true attached to it? Like, why wouldn't you say just justified belief?
I would say just justified belief. I think that would be justified belief. I don't know. Reliably produced is better to me. But the reason I don't like truth is because to me it makes the definition end. It's just kind of dead there in the water. Right? It's a good definition. Okay, great. We've got a good definition. But now what? Because we can't know anything about truth, with a capital T, unless by truth you mean kind of scientific truth, and then I guess I have no problems with it whatsoever.
Well, say if you look at, let's say, just say you call it like justified belief, right, or reliably produced belief. So let's say you do an experiment to come up with you're looking for to prove a certain hypothesis or whatever. So you do the experiment in like a relatively standard way. You use decent scientific methodology, and you come up with a very strong result. So like that you get a rejection factor of say like 1%. Usually 5% is a cutoff for most physical sciences. So you're well under it. So it would seem like you're justified, right? You mightn't really know if it's true or not, but you would seem like it's justified. So you say, okay, I have knowledge, and it's published. So let's say that later on there's a number of other studies which would come out and contradict that. Now, would you still say that the first result is knowledge?
No, I would be inclined not to. I would take knowledge away from the first result.
Yeah, the analogy that's usually used is the people used to think the Earth was flat, right? And they would say, I know the Earth is flat because X, Y, Z.
The experiment I'm interested in is what can we do to say whether or not a subject knows something?
But like the first one is still formed by a reliable process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is it not knowledge anymore?
Hey, Jack, Phil, and Josh, if you guys also want to jump in on something too as well, it would be interesting to hear your inputs.
Don't let the pal stalkers talk.
Last time I talked about the deflationary theory of...
I don't understand what's being discussed.
Well, we're just talking about theories of knowledge in general.
I think Cliff is trying to get us to come up with what we really mean. Or, I think that's what Cliff is doing. He's doing Socrates on us. He's doing a Socrates.
It might be like, why don't we also? It could be we can come back to this. I'm just interested to hear what are the theories of knowledge that you guys, I guess, are fond of or find most persuasive, and if you know any reasons why they're better than the other theories of knowledge, and if you are aware of any drawbacks of your theories of knowledge, I would be interested to hear all of that. I guess because Jack, you or Philip or Josh haven't spoken in a while, maybe you guys could start.
Josh? You said Josh?
Yeah, one of you three. One of the three.
I'm an idiot. No one's interested in hearing what I have to say.
Just fucking say it, man. You're a coherentist, right?
Yeah, that's a theory of truth.
It's also a theory to knowledge, right?
No.
Yeah, I'm a
Yes, it
coherentist only on truth as well.
Hmm.
Knowledge, I would be the foundationalist, I guess.
So, what are you in the pursuit of knowledge?
Jack, Josh, or Philip?
I don't know, man.
You don't know? All right.
They generally have a kind of a distaste for expressing their own, like they're kind of, maybe they'd be better at critiquing.
Yeah.
Somebody present one and let's have them critique it.
That, or do you find, or do any of you guys find any of them more appealing than others?
I don't think any epistemology makes sense other than a pragmatist one.
Right.
Why is that?
I don't understand what truth could even mean if it doesn't mean some kind of regulator upon our experiences, right? So the idea is that when we construct propositions about the empirical world, what we're attempting to do is make a model that will correctly predict our experience, right? So I don't correspondence theorists want to say something like that there's some way the world is independently of how we conceive it, right? That our claims that we make about the world somehow can match, which is to say correspond to.
Oh, I think he muted, but maybe he dropped. But I think it's sort of similar to what we were talking about before with semantic externalism, right? Like all of our whenever we talk about things, right, they're always going to be mediated through our sense, right? We don't just have like direct access to the referent.
Okay.
Yeah, I really think that's true, and that's one of the things that really gets me all up in arms, right?
I don't know if Jack's still there, but I mean he unmuted.
He just said BRB.
Oh, okay.
And what do you have an issue with, Helena?
That we can't know the out there that's there, if there is an out there. We can't really know it. We can only know, how we see it if it's there. So it's these definitions that just assume it. They don't work very well.
Yeah, that goes back to the map and the territory kind of thing, and never really having direct access to the territory.
All right, so the idea that the models are getting closer and closer, or that we are working hard to get closer and closer to get our models to match better and better. We can never know if they're really, when we measure whether or not they're matching, is we just see, can we predict what happens? And the better we get at predicting what happens, then we claim we're matching. But we don't really know we're matching anything. We're just getting better and better at predicting what we see happen as a result.
Yeah, what seems to be the case, and that's where I think the pragmatism part comes in, where you go with the best case, right? Like the more we know, the better cases we can make. And
Okay, so let's take an example of someone who has, for whatever reason, a very distorted sense. He senses something very different than what all of us sense. Now, let's just say that he's doing this, and he's making predictions, and he's matching the predictions that he makes, but only he can actually see and experience these predictions. To all of us, it looks like that dude's a madman. Like he's not actually doing anything. Like he's making all these predictions, he's doing all these experiments, he's claiming he knows stuff, but nobody else can see or hear or experience any of the things that he's experiencing. Like, would we say that he knows things?
No, we wouldn't.
Yeah, of course we would.
Would you think we would?
He stipulated it in a thought experiment.
yeah, where the guy would know things.
Saying that we don't have epistemic access to him in case we wouldn't, but presumably we would experience things that are inconsistent like that, unless you're thinking that there can be inconsistent experiences, right? Like if he goes and walks into the middle of the street, doesn't experience getting hit by a car and like dying and shit, right? But we experience it. I assume that there's going to be a fact of the matter, right? In one case, he's not going to be experiencing anymore.
Right, but up until the time, like, so we don't need to do that, right? Like, you can actually see whether or not you could experience him going out of existence. Right, so which is what you're saying. You could put him in front of a car, he could get ran over. And at some point, we would lose track of him as part of our experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so at that point, we would say, well, he's obviously wrong then, right? Because he's no longer in our experience, but we were right.
Yeah, but it could be coincidentally the case that he knows things. His map could be coincidentally, it could be different than ours, but coincidentally lead to the same things.
But if you're not using a correspondence type view, what are you actually talking about when you're mapping it to something? Like, what is it being mapped to? Because he's doing everything the same way as that we are doing it. He's making predictions. They're coming up exactly with his experiences. Unless we want to throw him in front of a truck.
No, I'm saying you could have a correspondence theory that led to the same conclusions as a coherent theory. Just by coincidence. Where the coherentist wouldn't try to map it to reality in that same way.
So he builds models, and these models predict his experiences, right?
Yeah.
I don't see what's the problem with saying just because we don't have his experience. I don't see what's the problem with calling that knowledge. Right? Presumably there would be some types of experiences, like you've stipulated that we're experiencing him, right? So we're going to have some experiences that are consistent with him having true experiences, right? Like if he has true experiences, then we would expect him to act a certain way. Right after he performs an experiment, we might expect him to raise his fist. Just because we haven't experienced it doesn't mean that he hasn't experienced it. We experience things that are consistent with him experiencing whatever he says he's experiencing, right?
Right.
Well, so you can think of a crazy example, like, somebody thinks that red cars cause radio waves in the brain, and so he goes around predicting every time he sees a red car, a radio wave is going to hit his brain and some crazy result, like make people start hunting him, right? And so he's perfectly consistent because all of his predictions bear out, but we wouldn't say he has knowledge. Would we? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I would. If he's going by that coherent correspondence.
No,
Because-
it's to
because
test
every time
that.
this happens,
It's to
it
test
corresponds.
correspondence. It's to test whether or not correspondence is a good definition.
Right.
Right?
So
Against your intuition. In
Right,
my
the
intuition, I wouldn't say he has knowledge. I would say he's got some mistake happening in his thinking.
Right, so I think the reason why is that you would deny that his experience is true. Like that you would think
Right,
that,
right.
okay, that you saw the red car, and now you're concluding that the red car happened when people are hunting you, but it's not really the case that people are hunting you. You're imagining that.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
actually
right.
true. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Because that's your experience. Your experience of the event is that he's actually imagining that. So when the mailman looks at him and stops and reaches down and, puts a letter into his packet and quietly circles it, he's not actually mapping out a plan to kill this guy. He's just basically crossing a dot or something on his... But the other guy who looks at this and experiences this as part of his plan, you're going to say, no, this is not actually what's happening.
Right. So that seems to me that this theory of knowledge isn't any better, right? And there is something going on involving truth, involving a there out there. So I think it's a good critique. I don't know. What do you guys think?
So you want there to be some kind of correspondence that you could actually refer to and say no, if we look at it, I can look at mine, looking at it compared to the real whatever, and mine is closer to the real whatever than yours are. So therefore,
it seems like there's a real whatever, even though I don't like that, right? Because I don't think any of us could really get to it if there is one. We can't know for sure there is one, and if there is one, we can't ever really get to it. But there is something there.
Okay, we could take something as simple as an inverted color spectrum, right? You have one person who experiences red when they look at objects that reflect a light of a certain nanometers, right? And then you have another person that experiences a different color, right? Now, what sense does it make to say it's really red or it's really blue or it's really green, right? What on earth would it correspond to?
especially if it was like perfectly inverted, right? So everything red was green, everything green was red, and so you couldn't even know, suppose, that he was seeing the different color than you.
But we're right. We're not talking about the epistemic issue, right? We're not talking about whether we could know it, right? It's a perfectly inverted spectrum. We take, for the sake of argument, that it's a perfectly inverted spectrum, right? Now, the correspondence theorist is going to say something like, well, one of them is right and the other one is wrong, and that doesn't make any sense to me. They're going to say the fact of the matter is the ball is really red as opposed to blue, right? And that doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know what it's supposed to be corresponding to if it's not supposed to be reflective of certain experiences.
Right?
Can you give that an example without something like color? Something that may just be subjective?
Say that again.
Can you give that that analogy, that metaphor, with something else other than color?
Yeah, you can imagine that there's a chair in a room that for everyone who experiences this chair, right? They go to touch it, they feel it, it predicts all sorts of experiences. They think that that's what it means for there to be a chair. But then you can postulate another agent, right? Doesn't have any of those experiences. When he goes to feel something, he doesn't feel anything, right? It doesn't, when it brushes up against him physically, it doesn't alter any of his experiences in any way whatsoever, right? And one person is going to say, well, there's really a chair there, and the other person is going to say, no, there is no chair there. I don't think that there's a fact of the matter, given that the two experiencers are having completely disparate experiences, right?
Mm.
Now, relative to one set of experiencers, I think it's going to be true that there's a chair, and relative to the other set, I think it's going to be false that there's a chair.
No, thank you. That's a perfect example to help me understand it. Not too long ago, there was a Star Trek where they were on the holodeck, and the holodeck people thought that they were the real people, and that everybody else was actually the holograms, and the vice versa. Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying.
So why is it true?
There wouldn't be a fact of the matter there.
So why is it true?
Well, I think what we're tracking, right, when we're tracking truth, is going to be a relativistic sort of model, right? So there's not going to be any correspondence. It's going to be relativized.
Right.
Yeah, I still don't know like what you mean by when you say true. Then, so what is the true? Like what makes it true? Like, what do you mean when you say it's true? If it's not corresponding to like the state of affairs.
Yeah, it coheres with the experiences.
Yeah, but so does the guy who doesn't experience the chair.
Right, and it would be relative to that.
So it's true for him that there is no chair there, and it's true for the other guys that there is a chair there.
Yeah.
Right, within their experiences, right.
Right, so true just means essentially what you experience.
Or what coheres with your experience. Or at least how we're stating. Right, so if you actually did feel the chair and all that, but you claimed you didn't actually experience that, you didn't actually have that experience, then it wouldn't be true.
Xbox, you're really quiet, by the way.
So you would say he knows there is no chair there. And the other guys know that there is a chair there. And both of them are true.
Right, but not true in a outside of the relative definition. Not like what a correspondence theory would want to try to put as this big T truth existing separately from the experiences.
And is that what you would want like people to mean when they said truth and they had knowledge?
That's what I think they mean.
That's what you think they mean?
Right. The way they convey it, yeah. That's
No,
exactly
it
what I think
isn't.
they mean.
I don't believe you. I don't think that you think that's what people mean.
I do. I've always put forth that I'm pretty
What would
sure
it
that I
mean?
hold the coherency. I mean, it,
Wow. Okay. All right.
I think the color example is easier, right? Um, so like when you just use the color example, and someone says, I know that thing is blue, or I know that thing is red, and they're talking about the same object or whatever. What does it mean for one to be right and one to be wrong?
Right, but isn't it different for me to say that an object is red and for you to say that an object is blue? Like, aren't we talking about like a purely internal experience that we're having then that can't be duplicated by anybody else? Like, isn't that different than me saying Helena just got shot?
Well, he's saying that if you imagine that they're inverted, right? So if everything that I see, if everything that I see that I'm calling red is inverted for you, right? So in your from your point of view, you're seeing what I would call blue, but you're calling it red, right? That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, sure. Everything that you see as red, I see as blue. But like, I don't even know what you see when you see blue. Like, I know what I see. I know what I experience when I experience blue. And as long as that you put the same label on something, like if I ask you to pick out all the blue objects, and you pick out all the same objects that I pick out, I know we're having a similar experience, but I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know in your mind when you see blue, I don't know what you see. I just know that we have a shared experience of blueness. But if you picked out different objects, if I picked out all five, if there was 10 objects in a room and 5 of them were blue, and I said, okay, pick out the blue objects, and you picked out like one yellow one red one, what I perceived as yellow and red, well then that's different. And it's not the fact that, I'm saying that the experience you're having of a blue object is different than mine. I'm saying that you're having an experience of something that I experience as a blue object, and something that is a red object, but you're saying both of them are blue, so we're having a difference. But I don't know what your experience is. I just know it's not the same as mine.
Like you could do it. You could do it. You don't even have to have a perfectly inverted spectrum. Like you can. There's that thing where people saw that dress as white and gold, and others saw it as blue and black, right? Now, what we are appealing to when we say, well, this dress is really blue, or this dress is really white or white and gold, or blue and black, right? When we say that, all we're saying is that we have to appeal to another set of experiences, right? Where people say, I generally, whenever I experience this blue color consistently, right, it's an instance of us being able to detect this measure of light wave, right? Now, so what we mean is that we can appeal to other experiences to settle the dispute. But what the correspondence theorist wants to say is that independent of any appeals to experience, right, the dress is really blue or black, or really really gold and white, right? And I don't think that makes any sense, because any time what we use to settle disputes is other experiences. Now, if you take this to an agent who doesn't have anything like the experiences we have, I mean, it's hard to conceive of. It's hard to imagine, right? But let's just say it's logically possible that there is such an agent.
Yeah, they could be just kept in a black and white world, right?
That have these radically different experiences. I mean, you'd want to say that they exist in this world, right? They just have a radically different experience. Now you say, but you can't appeal to any of your experiences to settle the fact, right? Whether or not this person is right or wrong when they say, the dress is blue and red, because they don't actually experience the light waves or whatever, right? So it's almost like what's going to settle the fact, and in fact they don't experience the adverse effects of the light waves, right? Like they don't have any reaction to the radiation or anything like that. It's a very radically different type of agent, right? Something that we've never seen before. In that scenario, you're not going to have anything to appeal to. So it's sort of like, what does it mean for you to say this? In this case, it's true that the dress really is blue and black, right, rather than white and gold for this agent who doesn't experience the light waves or anything else like that. You know, it's nonsensical.
Right, but I mean that's not what we mean when we say blue. Like we don't actually mean of a particular frequency of light. Like, because we knew what blue was long before we knew that light had a frequency. Like when we say that objects are blue, what we mean is that people with proper ability to perceive color in proper situations where they can perceive color will call this thing blue.
But what I'm saying is what we're considering proper, right, is we appeal to other sets of experiences that agents that are like us share. That's what it means for them to be properly functioning.
Not necessarily.
What else could it mean?
What else could it mean?
But it wouldn't, like, for example, we can look back in time and we can find people who had a way to experience the world that was radically different than the other people around them. And we wouldn't say because it was radically different that they weren't experiencing the world properly. Like, we don't always just appeal to popularity. Like, for example,
it's not appealing to popularity, it's appealing to experiences.
Right, you're appealing to the greatest number or other experiences which are similar to you.
Yeah, you don't have to appeal to, I mean, one person. There could only be one other person. Like, if everyone saw the dress, right, which I think the majority of people actually do see the dress as yellow or as gold and white. I think that's actually, most people get that impression, right? You can appeal to other experiences that they have, right? Experiences with things such as light waves, and generate other predictions in experience, right? Like you're going to generate the prediction, well, if I show a beam of light and reflect it off of a specific canvas or whatever, that's going to reflect the specific nanometer. You're going to experience this, right? There's just, what we're going to say is that the reason you're experiencing it differently is we might give some neurological explanation or something, right? But the only thing that we'll be able to do in that case is appeal to another set of experiences. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything to say this person is correct when they say they're experiencing the gold and white dress rather than the blue and black dress.
Right, so you have two groups of people that both experience different things. So which one of them has the true belief?
Well, the only way you can settle it is by appealing to other experiences. It doesn't matter if these experiences are, as long as there's some consistency, right? As long as every other time that the same light waves are being reflected, they see blue and black, right? Then you could say that you would appeal to something that's going on in their brain that makes it sort of like helpful for them to see those colors differently in this specific lighting, in this specific instance, or whatever, you know. But other than that, if under every condition you gave them, they would say, yeah, that's blue and black, or that's whatever, you know. It's not going to be as if there's some way to settle the dispute as to who's right and who's wrong.
So as long as they're consistent in saying that they experience it as yellow or gold, I don't even remember what the two things are, but they're two dramatically different things. So you would say that they're right in saying that it's yellow and gold, and the other group is right in saying that it's blue and black.
Right. I don't think I don't think it would make. I think at that point the language, since I take qualia to be private, I think at that point the language would be the same, right? Because taken to that conclusion, it's not like there's going to be an empirical difference between the two, you know. Like it's just going to be private mental states. It's going to be like perfectly inverted at that point, you know.
Right. So the issue of conflict is the fact that they're going to say that the dress is yellow and gold or whatever, but other things that you see as blue, they're going to not have that consistent thing. They're going to call some things yellow and gold, but not other things yellow and gold. So the set of objects that you would say are yellow and gold, they're going to disagree about what's in that set.
Yeah, unless you appeal to some other sets of experiences, right? And they'll say, because like I personally saw that dress as it looks like yellow and gold to me, or white and gold to me. But I mean, my friend just thinks I'm like crazy for having that, but I can't do anything about it, you know. I
couldn't see it as blue and black from that picture. I had to go to the catalog to see it as blue and black. But the catalog picture, it's clearly blue and black. It's not white and gold. But I couldn't make the other picture turn blue and black. It was always white and gold no matter what I did.
I just went and looked at it while y'all were talking. I see white and gold too.
Yeah, but if
I
you go
think the majority of people actually see white and gold. But the reason we say that they're wrong, because we know, right? We set out other experiences, right? And we know that we're looking at the same dress or whatever. Like where it was purchased, and we know we have different background information, and we could, you know, do the same thing with the light waves or whatever, and then we would have different experiences.
But all the other experiences except that one picture, or nearly all of them, let's say, would make it look blue and black. So that's why I would say actually it's blue and black, and that's just a weird picture.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of what the point you're making. I am appealing to other experiences.
Yeah.
In order to determine what was right and what was wrong.
Yeah, but what do you mean when you say it's actually blue and black?
I mean, when I looked at it in all the other circumstances, it looked blue and black. And it was just that one picture that made it look white and gold.
So you didn't have a real your experience was distorted at that point in time.
That's right. It was an optical illusion. Yeah, that's the way I would want to say it.
Yeah, it's not it's not actually an optical. It was just a bad camera.
I posted that photo in the external chat in the Hangout. That compared the two directly, which is just my friend. I swear to God, he says he thinks I'm an insane person for saying it looks white and gold, but it does. And I don't know, Cliff, do you experience this?
That's because he's wrong.
I forget what I saw it as. I think I saw it as the blue and whatever, the darker colors.
I see it as white and gold, unless I try to make it look the other color.
Mm-hmm.
One time it flipped the other color, and I couldn't recapture it.
Yeah, there's a picture, if you Google it, there's a picture that has a black dot in the middle of it, a square, and it says to stare at that square for 15 seconds or so, and then you have to have that picture alone on your page. You can't have the Google image page with a bunch of them on it.
But anyway, let's get back to Nihilist's point, right? Because this is just an example that he was using. Suppose it wasn't about the picture. Suppose there really were people who couldn't, you know. Is it true what he's saying, that the only way we can determine who's right or wrong is by appealing to other experiences?
Right, you have group A that sees it gold and white. You have group B that sees it blue and black. How do you decide who's right? Or can
Group
you?
A, they got an A. Whereas the other group just got a B. Crap, I didn't listen to the original question. I feel bad.
So the question is there really a fact of the matter?
Right.
Not just with the dress, but, extended out into everything.
Yep.
Well, there's a question of if there is a fact of the matter. There's a question of can you know the fact of the matter. There's a question of is it of benefit of either one of those to be yes or no. Like, let's say that you have a model that exactly predicts your observations. Exactly. Of whatever you want to have observations of. So you have observations of anything, the stock market, for example. You have a model that exactly predicts what's going to happen in the stock market. Does it matter to you if the things that your stock market is taking into account are sort of actual real things in an actual real world if your model exactly predicts the stock market? Does it matter to you?
The idea is what we mean for it to be actual, for it to be real is exactly that it predicts the experiences.
Yeah, would you want it to be any more than that, or would you be perfectly satisfied?
I'm satisfied with that.
Yeah, I don't think Helena is.
Yeah, what were you about to say, Helena?
I was going to say if it really does, then that's okay.
What about if you use something completely silly, but it still worked?
That's still okay. I mean, a lot of our models are silly. If they work, we use them.
For example, when Bohr came up with his model of his atom, it upset a lot of people.
Yeah, but it's a really good model.
Right, and that's what Bohr said, right? So
Yeah.
Bohr said, okay, look, how come the electrons don't fall into the nucleus? They should. Everything that we know says that they should. And Bohr said, no, they don't. Why not?
Right.
Well, because they just can't. Because there's certain orbits that electrons move into, and there's certain orbits, so they can only move in these. And then he was like, well, why would that be the case? Like, what's behind that? He said, I don't know, but that works. And it was the start of a huge division in science that still rages till this day. A lot of the models...
I'm more against... I think I lean more towards the practical than the... What bugs me is that people... Yeah, I feel like I'm pretty much okay with there not even being a fact of the matter. But that's why I don't like, for example, justified true belief, right? Because it relies on assuming that there is a fact of the matter. Doesn't it?
Yeah, for the true part, right?
No, I don't think so.
Then what's the true part about?
Well, look, you can have a belief. I think justification, in most, at least in empirical cases, is an instance of an epistemic stance, right? So it being probabilistic, right, doesn't mean that it's going to predict all of your experiences. It just means that so far it has, right?
But that's not justified true belief.
That's justified belief.
Well, yeah, I know. I'm saying that that's what the justification is, right? The true part is when it turns out to actually predict all your experiences.
But usually in JTB, at least the way most people use it, they're meaning that that's the actual state of affairs, that there actually is a fact of the matter, whether you can know it or not.
Well, when we cash out the fact of the matter like we did, right, we're saying like with respect to my experiences, it's consistent with all of my experiences, you know.
Yeah, when he says
Yeah, I agree.
justified, when he says true, he means only in relation to his experience. He's not referring to an actual other thing that his experience is getting close to.
Right. Yeah, I actually agree with that. And that's so. I think it's much more consistent. Use it that way, but I
mean,
know
if that's
in
what
most
you...
cases you hear it's meaning actually true outside whether you know it or not. It's not dependent upon you at all, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what we're going to agree we mean by truth, then okay, then I don't have any issues, right?
Yeah, but like as I said before, if you went to a doctor, would you be comfortable if he said that?
If he said that it has worked in all of our previous attempts, yes, I would be very comfortable with that.
No, if he said that's what he meant by justified true belief, like that he was fully aware of the fact that other people had radically different experiences, but for him, this is what he experienced. So it was true. Like, you wouldn't want that, right?
I think that's close to what they mean, though, when they actually say that. Like,
I don't think it is.
maybe
Right?
maybe people don't hear it that way, right? But I think that's usually what's conveyed, or what the person's meaning.
I don't think that's really what you mean. Like, when you say, like, let's just say me and you were walking down the road, and both of us, see like a cat sort of walk off or just like go over through the bushes or whatever, right? And I see it as a cat, and you see it like as a mountain lion. So you would say, well, yeah, I know there was a mountain lion there, right? It's true because I experienced it. Well, let's just say we talked to a whole bunch of other people, right? And they all saw the same cat that I did. Are you still going to hold to your sort of mountain lion thing?
No, it's not true because I experienced it, though. That's not the case being made.
No, I'm not saying it's true yet, because that's what true means, right?
No, it has to cohere with the experience, right?
What experience? Your
The experience doesn't make it true.
Well, I think there's always going to be some sort of issue with agents interacting. That if their experiences are going to be different, they're going to end up being isomorphic, because if they're not isomorphic, then you're going to have something to appeal to, right? Otherwise, there won't be a discrepancy, like we saw in the case with the black and blue dress, right? It's because there are inconsistencies with the two experiencers, right, that we can resolve the dilemma, right? And it's in virtue of the fact that we can have certain discussions with it, that we know that, well, it's not an instance of perfectly inverted spectrum, right? Because if it were an instance of a perfectly inverted spectrum, there wouldn't be a discrepancy in the first place, right? And so the idea of us even communicating that that they mean something different, like you could have, it's going to be a problem, like it's going to be a private language problem, when we are conveying meaning, right? There's gonna be issues with there being a private language that one person is using to mean something wholly different than what someone else is, and still being able to function with them, right? So if you're setting it up to where they're radically different experiences, you would think that there's going to be an isomorphism between the experiences, just like there's going to be an isomorphism between a person who experiences every time I see a green object, they see a red object, and so on and so forth, right? If it's perfectly inverted, then there aren't going to be any discrepancies, right? But the idea is that it's not going to be true that that one person, that the color is really red or really blue, right? That the person is looking at. Neither of those are going to be really true, because it's not corresponding to anything, right? It's just predicting experiences. But the fact that we have an isomorphic model means that we're going to communicate in such a way that the language is going to be perfectly synchronized to the experiences we have. Otherwise, we're going to end up with situations like the red and blue dress. So when you say, I see a mountain lion, right, that's going to predict certain experiences, because your concept of a mountain lion is not going to be isomorphic to when someone sees a cat, right? It's not going to have the exact same content, right? It's going to have, it's going to make different predictions.
Right, which are also experientially bound.
But see, the idea is that they wouldn't be using that language. They wouldn't be using that language if it were, if they wouldn't be using a different language. Like, look, if we see a different color every time we look at the same object, we're going to use the same language, right?
Right, but we're not just talking about different words, right? Like, we're actually talking about the fact that, so, if you actually go into a room and you put a picture of a cat and a picture of a mountain lion, right? I go over to the picture of the cat and I pick this up and I say, yeah, this is the thing that I saw. And Xbox says, no, that's not the thing that I saw. This is the thing that I saw. And he picks up the mountain lion. He's not saying mountain lion for the thing that's called cat. He's actually saying there's a different thing there, that he experienced the mountain lion.
Right, and then what we're going to have is an instance in which we're breaking the isomorphic views, right? And then we'll have to appeal to other experiences. But I think any time that you're invested in a language game with any other person, right? The way it works, because intentionality is public, is that there's going to have to be isomorphisms between between the sets of experiences, otherwise communication will be impossible, right? Like, I probably have to read more about private language arguments, but I'm sure Wittgenstein made some good ones. But I sort of understand the idea. I don't have the best wording for it. But the idea is that there's not going to be any private language about qualitative states. There's going to be isomorphisms between the sets of experiences. So if you are, in fact, using the same terms, there's going to be a one-to-one match between that, what you experience from the agent you're engaging with is going to cohere with your experiences of what you saw, right? There won't be a discrepancy there. Just like there won't be a discrepancy if I look at an object and it appears to me to be green, to what I identify as green, right? And it appears to you what you identify as, what I would identify as red, right? There's not going to be any sort of discrepancy. They're going to hold up the same picture. They won't hold up a picture and say, this is what I saw, and it's not going to be incoherent with your experiences. Like if I hold up a ball, right, and I say, this is what I saw, and you look at the same thing and you say, that's also what I saw, but we have different experiences because they're inverted or whatever, there's not going to be any discrepancy there. Likewise with the case with the mountain lion and the cat or whatever we were talking about before, unless we're, like, because we're communicating some specific idea, right, there's going to have to be variance, otherwise there won't be any sort of discrepancy. And so similar to what Helena is saying is when he's saying, well, this is consistent with all my experiences, presumably it's going to be consistent with all of Helena's experiences too, right? Because they're communicating the idea amongst one another. Otherwise, there wouldn't be an issue, you know. I feel like I'm not explaining this well, but do you understand what I'm talking about when I'm talking about, like, the when I'm talking about the inverted spectrum, that there's not going to be a discrepancy there?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so when you're talking about truth, it doesn't seem like you're talking about an instant of experiences. It seems like you're talking about a relationship between experiences, where truth emerges from a set of experiences. Right. That's what I was sort of wanting to see would come out earlier when I said, is that's all that you would want the doctor to say, that he had that experience. It wouldn't be. You'd want something more than that, right? You'd want a coherent set of experiences.
Yeah, well, a coherent set of experiences, yeah, sure. Because I think that's all it means for something to be true, but what I think I object to is just that there's just a rhetorical value in those phrasings because we use them differently, right? We don't always use them in the philosophically rigorous way. So I think what anybody's issue would be with that would just be a rhetorical issue. I don't think it's a philosophical issue, you know.
Right. So that was the question, right? So why would you pick one particular subset? And your answer is that the subset that you predict, those beliefs that you're calling knowledge, have predictive ability. Right. Exactly. So see, that's one of the biggest obstacles that people come out. Like when someone like Darwin says, like, you can't have knowledge, and he gives this particular definition of knowledge, and then people say, okay, well then no, I can't have knowledge based on that or whatever, but I can have another subset of beliefs. And the reason this subset of beliefs is interesting to me, because the behavior that comes from acting on those subset of beliefs is a particular type of behavior. Like, why don't we just act on beliefs rather than knowledge? That's why theories of knowledge are interesting, because of the utility that they actually have.
Right. And I don't feel when just side note of it, when Darwin's is asking about knowledge that way, he's asking about certitude. He's not asking about knowledge. He's using the word knowledge, but he's asking about something. It came out clear in that last hangout I was with him that he's wanting to know if I can know something that I can't be wrong about. Well, that's certitude. There are things that I can know that I don't doubt, and I don't need these preconditions of rationality to have certitude about them. But
Right. Well,
that could be, I guess, proclaimed as a subset of some kind of beliefs, but I don't think in practice it would be.
well, I mean, you're free to define whatever you want, right? Like, M has possibly, well, it's maybe similar to Darwin's anyway, but he states it in a more radical manner. The way that M defines knowledge is a subset of beliefs that I don't know how to put anything into. Like, to me, it's an empty set. I don't know how to ever achieve a state where I can put anything under the label that M calls knowledge. But he thinks that he can. So for him, it's a very useful label, because he has belief that he believes he does fall under this thing of knowledge, and it gives him a very secure starting point. For me, it's not a very useful label because it's an empty set of things. It would be just the same thing as saying knowledge is a set of beliefs that's communicated to me by rocks. There are no beliefs that's communicated to me by rocks, but if you want to call them knowledge, there's no beliefs in that category.
Right.
It's not a very useful label to me.
I'm not gonna. I'll talk to you guys later.
Have a good night, man.
I disagree with all of you.
You're free to be wrong. That's cool. Yeah, no, it's good what you're pointing out, because I didn't realize until tonight that's when Darwin's is using knowledge that he's, and not just him, but other people too, will actually be using what I would define as certitude to call
Oh, good. Did you guys go into talking
knowledge.
about Darwin's deity?
Slightly.
Just
Yeah,
that he means certainty when he says you can't really know.
No, he's not
Yeah, that
talking
was-
about anything I would actually call knowledge.
Well, I mean,
yeah, that's what I wanted to segue into, just how to counteract like precept arguments that have to deal with knowledge in general. So continue, please. Sorry I interrupted.
No, I think
I
that's
don't
what
see
we
why
just
you
had.
need. Why do you need to counteract them? I mean, they.
Well, I think one reason to counteract them is that I think that they kind of stifle they kind of make the great debate, I guess, seem stagnated.
Well, I think that they're perfectly right. I don't know things first with certainty.
But
I just agree. I don't
there
know
any
things
things-
with certainty.
Are there any things that you can't doubt?
well, to be clear, I mean, this isn't an argument that Darwin's invented. It goes back to Descartes, right? If you're going to attribute it to anybody, like his argument is identical to M's, right? Like M's Satan argument is the evil demon argument,
Right.
with a different name on it. So
Yes,
this
it
is
is.
very old, and I mean, like the impact that this had on philosophy is staggering, right? I mean, there's a handful of names that you throw out, and Descartes is one of them. So it is a very interesting argument.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, at least what I think Joe's going to counteract is so that we're not sitting here spinning, chasing our tails, arguing when we're actually arguing past each other, and we end up in this weird circle that you feel dumbfounded by. It just
Well, I mean,
stifles the conversation.
there's a really simple way to counteract that, and like the main purpose of this argument, if you let it run its full circle, it always ends in one line. The person, Darwin's or otherwise, will say, "Okay, good. So you are saying
Right.
that you cannot know things for certain," and then you're going to say yes. He said, "Okay, good. I don't have to listen to you anymore."
Right.
That's the whole point of the argument, for him to be able to say, "Okay, good. I don't need to listen to you anymore." But isn't that a silly thing to say?
Yeah, but if we take them seriously, though, for real, what do I care if it's a matrix? As long as it's always the same, then I don't. What do I care if I'm in a matrix? Well, it's only if, like Realist was saying, it's only if discrepancies occur to me that it matters whether or not I'm in a matrix.
Yeah, but you do care, right?
No, if really everything
don't?
is the same, and I never know, I can't ever know whether or not I'm in one, then it's okay that I'm in one.
Right. The
Yeah, but
moment
you
that
do
you start
care.
worrying about it or actually caring about it
Well,
is,
if there's
is the moment you realize you're in the matrix, or you take the pill, or you wake up.
Okay.
Or,
well,
Well,
it would be like if I saw some if there was evidence that I was in one, then it would bother me.
right.
okay, but if tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
If tomorrow you woke up and you knew you were actually in the Matrix, then you wouldn't act any differently?
Well, is everybody else in the matrix too, or is it just me?
Just you.
Yeah, I would try to get out. Yeah, I would.
Right, so it does matter to you if you're in the Matrix or not.
Well, yeah, I guess it does. I just
but,
didn't.
like,
Only
I
because
just
it's
think
just what
all-
she said. Only when she has evidence that might be the case.
Right, but it does matter, like at some level. It does, like, to me, like, I act as if there are real people around me. Like, if I knew there weren't real people around me, I would act very fucking differently. Because I wouldn't care what happened to any of these things if I knew they weren't real people. Like,
Yeah,
if
but
I
that's-
if I knew that I was in a Matrix, I'd act completely differently.
Right,
Why
but the
wouldn't I?
point is you can't ever know. That's
Right.
why it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, that's the one I always run with the dream. If yes, I could be in a dream right now. Do I have good reason to think I'm in one? No, so I'm not going to entertain it until I have some evidence that leads me to believe that might be the case. Then it matters to me. That's
Right.
it. That's the only stage that it will start mattering to me.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter because we can't know.
It doesn't matter because I don't have good reason to think it's the case. I don't have good reason to accept or doubt. Right. Like, what difference does it? It makes no difference to me right now if I'm actually in a dream or not.
That's what I don't
It
understand.
does.
Like,
It does
but-
if I. It does. It does if I have knowledge that to doubt that this is actual reality and to think this might be a dream.
Yeah, like, I don't know what you mean when you say that. It doesn't make any difference to me if I'm in a dream, but I would act differently if I knew I was in a dream. They seem to be contradictory.
No, without knowing, right? Without having good reason to think I'm in a dream, then it doesn't matter if I'm in the Matrix or dream or none of that matters to me because I have nothing to worry about. There's no worry there.
I don't know what it means. Like when you say it doesn't matter to me. Like I don't know if
That's what
when
I
I
just
drive
said.
to work tomorrow I could die in a car accident, and I don't think it's even possible for me to know that. But it matters to me.
Right, because you know it could be the case. You have good reason to think that could happen.
Right. Like
I
it
don't
could.
I don't have
I
good
can't
reason
ever
to think
know it.
that this could be a dream or the Matrix or.
Well, I think we do have good evidence that this could be the Matrix because we're basically at a point now where we're at a point now where a lot of things we would have thought were extremely beyond anything are starting to look like they could be real now. Like we're starting to approach the point now where we're getting machines that functionally have minds. You can argue about whether or not they do have minds or whether or not they do have personal experiences, but functionally, they're starting to behave like they have minds. It's getting to the point now where some of these interactive experiences, you can't tell if it's a machine or if it's a person or not. So, and there's lots of things like that. Like you can think about that. You can think about some other things, and you can sort of see that it's not that far-fetched that what we're experiencing could be something like that. I don't see why that would be completely out of the realm of possibility.
It's
Like, if you
not.
had to
No,
ask
no,
someone
no, no.
1,000
That's
right.
not the issue. No,
Right.
that's not the issue. It could be the case. We're in the Matrix or a dream right now. It's just I don't have any good reason to think that that's actually the case. Not that it's possibly the case, but I don't have any good reason to think that that's actually the case.
Right, but like I don't have any good reason to think I'm going to die when I go to work tomorrow driving a car. I would still say it matters to me. That's why I don't understand when you say it doesn't matter to you. I just don't understand what you mean when you say it. Like, if you would act differently if it was the case, then obviously it matters.
I'm saying it. I told you. I said I don't worry about it. Right. Like I don't. That's what I mean by it doesn't matter to me. I don't. It's not a worry I have.
Oh yeah, if all that you mean is that you don't worry about it, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, I don't worry about lots of things, but I would still say they matter. I just don't worry about them. But yeah, if that's what you mean, then yeah.
Yeah. I think that's all I'm meaning by saying that it doesn't matter. Is like it's not something I have to worry about now until I have good reason to think that that's the case, or that it's even actually what could be happening. Oh no, because I think possibility's fine.
Right, and that's why it doesn't matter if there is an actual state of affairs in any sort of sense, and that we map to that actual state of affairs. Because it isn't something to worry about, essentially, because you couldn't know it.
Right. Sure. I think I'm following. Well, I think I had the same view on God as well. Like, minus good reason, it's not something that I worry about.
Yeah, I think there's a difference. There's even a stronger argument there, right? Which I ran against James before, like that it doesn't matter to me if he's God exists or if he doesn't, because if he's God doesn't exist, it doesn't make any difference. If he's God exists, I'm going to heaven, so it doesn't matter to me if he's God exists or not.
Little tiny bunny doesn't know if it's spring or winter still. We can't hear you if you're trying to talk, Tomas.
It's because you got those tiny fucking ears.
But do you see the point I was trying to get earlier when I said that when you asked a doctor whether or not he knew something, it would have to mean more than he had the experience of that thing.
Yeah. I would think I would want my doctor to, be a thing that can say, yes, this is the case. Not just on my experience, but this is actually the case.
Right, but that's going back to wanting a correspondence type view.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So
I agree with that because I would want even with even not the doctor with anything in reality I want there to be a actual something to correspond to.
Too bad. Tom, can you work out?
Like, I want the access to it, but I don't think we have the access to
I can
it.
hear now.
Cool.
Okay, that's a different question, right? Like that's like asking someone, do you want God to exist? But like, well, all I'm saying is that there are two doctors, and one of them has the first view that he just says it's true when he experiences it, and another doctor doesn't. Like to him, it's to know something is much more than just to have experienced it. Which doctor would you go to?
Yeah, but I don't think one is saying that the one doctor's not just saying because I experienced it, this is the case. He's saying these cohere with my experiences. That going back to that relationship of it.
And what about if his experiences are different than all the other doctors?
Then I'm screwed.
But would you go to that
Potentially.
doctor?
That would be a case of just where discrepancies come up, right? So we would be able to solve it by appealing to other experiences.
Right.
But,
Right,
if there were no discrepancies, and whatever he was doing worked just as well as the other one, then yeah, what difference does it make, really?
So you would go with the doctor that had the experiences that were similar to the largest group of experiences in the doctors.
I'm saying that you couldn't really distinguish between the two doctors, really.
Right, unless it was completely alien to us, which wouldn't be the doctor in the case anyway.
I'm not sure.
Xbox, you're really quiet. It's hard to hear you though.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah.
No, but you could have like a doctor who had a particular medication, right? So in his experience, the medication worked for him when he had that ailment. And in his experience, it worked for him and his patients when he had that ailment. And then you had 10 other doctors who had the same medication, and it didn't work for any of their patients when they had it. So which doctor, and if you go to the doctor, do you take the medication or not?
Right, so then you've got this discrepancy situation that Nihilist was talking about, right? And so there'd be other experiences. For example, all the other doctors for whom the medicine didn't work.
Right.
And you would use those other experiences, and he's saying that the truth grows out of that kind of thing, right? Or at least you can say who's wrong based on that. And so you would go to the doctor whose medicine works, not the doctor who says his medicine works, because there'd be a discrepancy. But if the doctor, suppose they both happen to prescribe the same medicine, but one doctor thinks it works because of this, and another doctor thinks it works because of that, it wouldn't matter which doctor.
No, both like so you go okay. So me and Joe are the two doctors. So you go to Joe, and you're having pain, and Joe prescribes this painkiller to you, this pain, and it has worked for Joe in the past, and it has worked for all his patients that he's prescribed it to, and then you happen to know me. And then you say, yeah, Cliff, I went to see Joe, and he's prescribing this painkiller. And I was like, that doesn't work. Like, I've tried that with, like, 100 patients, and it's worked for absolutely none of them. So, like, I have a set of experiences, and Joe has a set of experiences. Let's just say that they're the same number of patients. Or let's say that I have many, many more patients than Joe. Like, would you say that one of us knows and one of us don't? Would it make a difference which one of us said something? How would you make a decision?
Well, I mean, in that case, I would take the medicine and see if it works for me.
And I would say you know. I think.
And I would say there's something weird. Maybe the collection of Xbox's patients have something all in common that we have yet to uncover, or something. Something is causing the discrepancy between the NIT numbers of the two different patients, right? So, but there's obviously still a discrepancy there, which isn't kind of what Nihilist was getting at. He was talking about cases where there's no discrepancy. But I'm not sure if we can conclude that there's no fact of the matter, because there could be cases where a discrepancy wouldn't be obvious.
Well, in that case, you can simply say, yeah, okay, I'll take the medication and see what it is. But you can't really do that for all medication, right? Like, it could simply be the case you're financially strapped, and you can only just take one pain medication. So you can take Joe's pain medication, or you can take mine. So which one do you take?
I guess I take yours because you've got more people saying yours works.
Well, do it as life and death. You know, all 100 patients you've ever given this medicine to, they've all died. All the patients I've given that exact same medicine to, every one of them have had full recovery.
So, does it make, like, do I know it's stronger than Joe knows it? Or does Joe not know it at all? Or do both of us know it?
Yeah, I think
well, I mean, if really Joe's collection of patients are being cured, then there's something that Joe knows.
Yeah, I would think, from the view that I'm putting forth, I'm pretty sure that I would say you both know it.
So Joe knows the painkiller works, and I know the painkiller doesn't work, and both of us know it.
Right. You don't know the same thing, though. You can't know the same thing because you both have two different sets of experiences to rely on.
But doesn't Joe know that Joe knows P and I know not P? Isn't that a bit of a problem?
No, because that's what I said. You don't know the same P, because you both have different sets of experiences you're relying on.
Right, but we're talking about the same painkiller, right?
Right.
So Joe is saying.
But you're not making the claim of that. You're making the claim about your experience of the painkiller. You're not making the knowledge claim about the painkiller itself. You're relying on your experiences with that painkiller.
Right.
And that's the same thing Joe is doing. So under that, you both have, the justified true belief, but the true in that is going to be based on the
So what's the belief?
What's the belief?
Yeah, like I would have thought the belief was that the painkiller works.
Right.
Right. So Joe knows it's true the painkiller works, and I know it's false the painkiller works.
Right, and the truth comes in based on your experiences, which are going to be different.
So you don't see it being a problem that both of us know the proposition and its negation.
Because it's not the exact same proposition and negation.
That's why I don't understand. Like, my understanding of the proposition was, this painkiller stops pain. This painkiller works. It's effective in relieving pain. That's the extent of the proposition.
It's true, this painkiller. You're saying it's true, this painkiller stops pain. You're leaving off in my experiences. That's what that doesn't need to be added because you're saying it's true. And when you're saying it's true that this painkiller works, you're saying based on my experiences, this painkiller works.
Yeah, but you could essentially add that to any statement, right? That's like saying, if I say Helena has yellow hair, I'm essentially saying it is true that I believe Helena has yellow hair in my experience. Like, you can always add these conditionals, but they're implied in sentences, right?
Yeah, I think those conditionals are implied in when you say true. If you're going by the coherency, right?
Right, but that's what we mean when we say something, right? Like when we assert something, we're asserting that it's true, right? Like if you ask me, like, Cliff, are you on a laptop or on a desktop? And I say on a desktop, I'm saying that it is true I'm on a desktop.
Right.
But that's what I mean when I say it's on a desktop.
Right.
Right? And I could also add in my experience to that. Like, that's always attached. It's like when someone says that's just your opinion, right? Everything you fucking say, it's just your opinion.
Right, right.
Well, what else am I going to say? Someone else's opinion? Right?
But then whenever you jump to knowledge, right, if you're going under that JTB, that T is always going to have all that implied into it. It's not going to be this actual fact of the matter truth that minus your opinion, minus Joe's opinion, it's true the painkiller works.
Right. But, like, if we're not talking about correspondence, right, if there isn't a real fact of the matter, then why are you going to go to me because I have 100 patients and you're not going to go to Joe when he has 10 patients? If there's no real fact of the matter, if there's no real correspondence argument, why are you going to go to me? Because almost everyone you ask to will say yes without even thinking about it. But they're sort of relying on a sort of correspondence argument there. But if you're going to throw correspondence out and you're just going to start arguing from the view of experiences, it doesn't seem to be so trivial just to throw Joe out the window.
Then you won't get my drugs that are secretly just Vicodin. It's a pickle. Yeah, I'm bringing this back to precept. The thing about that is, it seems like it's given cynically, the presuppositional apologetics. I've never heard any of these topics. I've never heard the term coherentism. I've never heard foundationalism, externalism, internalism, justified true belief. Never heard any of that when you watch the more ridiculous presuppositional apologists, like Psi 10, Bruggen something, or even when talking with Darwin's deity. I remember telling him, it sounds to me like you know the other theories of knowledge. Why is it the case that you're not bringing this up? And I don't know if that's true or not. but he didn't deign to answer me. And I'm wondering if, in order to prepare your presup apologetic, you go and you look at the other theories of knowledge, or if it's just assumed that that there's only one theory of knowledge, don't worry about it, and that justified true belief might be the thing. Like I've heard Jack in in the hangout for this YouTube presupper named Colin Pearson, and he mentions justified true belief. And Jack goes, well, what about Gettier cases? And the fact that someone who's aware of justified true belief only looked into it just far enough to know the phrase justified true belief, but not far enough to know what Gettier cases are, it surprised me. It seems to me that when you're taught this stuff now, when you look at things that summarize this stuff now, Gettier cases kind of come with the concept justified true belief. And so it's frustrating that these topics, these things are just they're not even like broached when presuppositional apologetics come up. And it's not just from the presupper side. Like if you watch the Matt Dillahunty debate, if you watch other debates and other people respond to presuppositional apologetics, they still don't bring this stuff up. And I don't understand why.
Well, I mean, the vast majority of these types of interactions are not between people trying to understand the position. They're people who have a position, and then they look for ways to support that position. So they're not going to look for the counter arguments, because the places that they're going to are not about teaching the understanding. They're about, this is how you support your position, right? Like, if you see people like William Lane Craig, right? So William Lane Craig will argue for the Kalam, right? And he has a bunch of arguments that he uses from mainstream science to support the Kalam, to get to Jesus, right? But, for example, you could ask William Lane Craig a very basic question, and you could say, but, Craig, Mr. William, the fact that when we look back in time and we see a Big Bang is a huge problem for physics. It's the exact opposite of what we would expect to see. Why is that the case? Or you could ask him, like, is it the expected thing that we should see a Big Bang? I don't think he would know that. I don't think he would know why it is a huge problem. It's one of the worst problems in physics that there is a Big Bang, because we shouldn't see that. But he's not going to know that because he doesn't study physics. What he does is he has an argument, get to Jesus. And he looks for a ladder that brings him to get to Jesus. He's not interested in exploring around that. He just wants to get there.
He doesn't want the cool extendo ladder.
Right.
I think that's right. I think also we have to assume that they really do believe it. And so that they don't need to go any farther than that, because they really do think that they have an external justification, that there really is a there out there, and that they can know it. You know, they're not just spouting it for spite. Right? They really, I think it's be wrong to think that they don't really believe it. Then they're just, what are they doing, right? We have to go with that they really do think that.
Yeah, I don't think you want to be a Dawkins and claim they're all delusional.
Yeah. Like, say William Lane Craig, he had to have taken a physics class. He had to have taken an astronomy class, right? Does that not get mentioned in an astronomy class, that it is a problem that there's a Big Bang?
No, you'd only start to see where that came up if you looked at theories for why is the universe the way that it is. Like, this is a question that Darwin's asks a lot of times, right? Like, he'll say something like, can you provide an ontology for something transcendental, like logic or something crazy like that, right? And then you'll say, well, I don't need to, or that's not a question in science. Bullshit. That's the biggest question in science. As Einstein said, right, the most amazing thing about science is that we can do it. And it's one of the biggest problems that people have been struggling with for a very long period of time. Like, why can we do science? Like, why is our universe ordered? What constrains our universe to be this way, to have these rules? So they're very interesting questions. But the unfortunate, and we have a lot of answers. We've had answers for quite some time. But the problem is, every one of these answers, every one of these theories, every one of these models, which have great predictive things, like there are models that explain why time only goes one way, why there's an arrow of time. But every model predicts the exact same fucking thing. We shouldn't see a Big Bang. That's a big problem. Like, we don't have a model that says why there's a Big Bang and why our universe is ordered. We have lots of models which show why our universe is ordered, why time flows, all this kind of lovely stuff we can talk about. But they all show not a Big Bang. And that's a big problem. But of course, William Lane Craig is not going to talk about it because that doesn't get you, like, that's an exploratory topic. We don't know the answer. It's a big question mark. And it's an active area in science. So they're not going to bring up something that's uncertain, right? Because they don't want you to talk about the topic. They want to use an argument to get you to Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he said that, I mean, isn't he saying that the Big Bang is the cause in the Kalam? Or
Jesus caused the Big Bang.
Yeah, but you know, we actually don't know. I mean, the Big Bang is where that's where our ability to explain things with classical mechanics kind of falls apart, right? And we have to go into quantum. What?
Yeah, Lawrence Krauss talks about that a lot. I don't know why he doesn't talk about it more, because he goes into crazy things.
Yeah.
But essentially, there's a big question mark around the singularity. Like, people think the singularity is a thing, like a bowling ball, right? It's not, right? The singularity is a question mark that we don't know. So all that we're saying is we can go back to a certain point of time, and then we do not know how to talk about this other point in time. So we draw a big circle, we put a question mark on it, and we just call that a singularity. And the reason it's called a singularity is because it's similar, like, if you talk about, like, singularities are when you divide by zero, right? Like, stuff blows up. You don't know how to talk about that. You don't know how to handle it, so you try to remove singularities in problems generally, because they can't sort of exist. You don't know. Like an object of infinite mass, if there was an object of infinite mass anywhere at all in our universe, we would all be pulled towards it. It wouldn't matter how far away from it that you were. An object of infinite mass has an infinite gravitational well, so every object would be pulled towards it at an infinite acceleration. So it's obviously the case that's not happening, so there is no infinite mass object in our universe. That's why, like, there's certain things that can't be infinite, there's certain things that can, like space could be infinite, that's not a problem.
But how do you know that, Cliff?
My cat.
Your cat, that's right. Knowledge is that which is derived from Cliff's cat.
So, like, you were talking about Gettier problems. Like, when I brought up Gettier problems to Darwin, he got completely freaked out about them. And then so he went and he did some reading on an apologist website that gave him an answer to Gettier problems. But his answer to Gettier problems doesn't make any sense given the way he approaches knowledge.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. Hey, Joe, how's it going? So,
Like,
okay. What is it? Well, should we set... Hey, how's it going, Joe? Joe, do you know what Gettier problems are?
I've been reading about them, yeah. I've been finding them quite interesting.
I want to come up with my own one. It'd be neat. My favorite one, or the one that's the quickest, I think, actually, is you're the captain of a ship. You believe you're heading north. You have a compass that has the arrow pointing north. So that's your belief is justified, and it's true that you're heading north. But what happened is you got super drunk last night and you fell on your ass, and your compass was in your back pocket, and you broke your compass so that the arrow is just pointing north. So it seems like your justification isn't really a justification at all, because it would point north no matter what. Bye, Helena. So intuitively, it seems like you can't say that you have knowledge. That's a Gettier case. Now, what Darwin's deity, he actually gives an answer, or he has a response to it, but you think it doesn't make sense, Cliff?
So what Darwin's would say is that you're not actually giving a full description of your belief.
Hmm.
Like, what your belief actually is that you're going north. You believe that you're going north because your compass is pointing north, or something like that, right? That's what he actually believes. Like, you going in the direction of your compass. Like, he gives this argument for the famous one where you see, what is it? You see a sheep in the field, right? But there's not actually a sheep in the field. There's just like a picture of a sheep in the field, but there's actually a real sheep right behind your picture, right? So what Darwin says is you don't actually have the belief that there's a sheep in the field. You have a belief that that thing is the sheep in the field, and that belief is wrong. That's why it's not knowledge.
Mm.
So you have a belief that the compass is pointing north, and you're going into the direction of the compass. And your belief about the compass is actually wrong. That's why it's not knowledge.
I mean, intuitively, that's actually sounds kind of reasonable. Why?
The problem is, like, you can always layer something on top of that. So you get into an infinite series of things on your belief. Like, you could also just layer dreaming on top of that, right? So then you also have to put, like, every belief becomes this infinite chain of clauses that you have to put on it. But that's not what you mean when you say beliefs.
I'm not sure what you mean by you can always put another layer on.
Right. So you say, for example, you look at the sheep in the field. You see the thing that looks like a sheep, and you say, "Well, it's actually my belief that there is a sheep in that field." And Darwin will say, "No, it's not that. Your belief is actually that the thing you see is a sheep in the field, right?" And you could say, "Well, like, couldn't it be the fact, that you're dreaming?" And then you'd say, well, it is my actual belief that I'm not dreaming, and the thing that I see is a sheep in the field. Like, you can always layer these clauses onto it. And Darwin's reaction is that, well, every time you put a clause onto it, I can just say, it is your belief that this thing, and he references the clause. But you can always keep layering clauses onto it. So where does the belief stop? Like, there is no such thing as a belief. A belief is an infinite string of clauses. But that doesn't make any sense. To say beliefs have infinite length.
Yeah. What apologist site did he get it from?
I have no idea.
What's considered the most rigorous Gettier problem that people can't refute? Or
Well, I think they would all. I mean, it's probably easier to refute the sheep one, and you went through it kind of fast, but it sounded like you did the same thing with the boat, with the ship captain one too, right, Cliff?
Yeah.
He said that the thing he believes is wrong, so that's why it doesn't matter what that he's justifying it with something
your
that's also
belief
wrong.
is actually that the compass is pointing north, and you're going in the direction of the compass, but the compass doesn't point north.
So.
yeah, I mean, my understanding of a Gettier problem was that you arrive at the same conclusion, but you got there a different way. But you got there through a sort of a belief which wasn't actually showing the true facts, whatever true is, but you ended up getting to the right conclusion anyway. Is that the wrong?
That's
basically
not what a Gettier problem is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
So in your analogy, then you'd have to actually still be going north.
Yeah, that's it, and it is true that he was going north. I mean, he could wake up
but then there's the compass, because the compass was broken and set on north.
Broken, set on north, so he probably just woke up, sees his compass, thinks it's working, and goes, all right, well, hey, all right, I thought we were going north, I believed we were going north last night, my compass is saying we're still going north, all right, awesome, and it happens to be the case that he is going north, it's true. But
so then that belief based on, I guess you're still going north based on
your
belief that your compass is working.
Yeah, is that what Darwin's would say? Instead?
Yeah, he would say your belief is not that you're going north, right? Your belief is that your compass actually points north. You're going in the direction of your compass.
I feel lame referencing him specifically. But then it seems like it's underhanded to say the presuppositionalist. But I think that's ultimately probably better. The presuppositionalist would, if he's relying on justified true belief. I could just say Psi. We all know Psi Ten Bruggen. He's a presupper. And no one likes him, so that's all right.
Well, you got to understand, too, that the presuppositionalists just don't want to deal with Gettier problems. They want to deal with Gettier problems in their framework of it could not be otherwise. Like, that's what they mean by belief. Like, there's a very simple way to deal with Gettier problems, right? Like, you can just say that you have a justified true belief. Sure, like, even when you can just say that it's knowledge. You can say that it is knowledge when you're going north and your compass points north. But you could say something like, yeah, it is knowledge, but it's very weak knowledge, because I know compasses do break, batteries do run out, so I know this is the case. So if you ask me, and that's why no captain will ever do that. Like, no captain will just look at one thing. They will always have multiple directional tools. So he will say, yeah, I know I'm going north. I just checked this one compass. But I have several other instruments which are also directional. I have my GPS. I have a bunch. When I check all of these things, now my knowledge meter is moving into the, black or whatever the hell it is. I would say I really have knowledge, because it's not a binary thing. It's not like you do have knowledge or you don't. Knowledge is sort of like height. You can get taller, you can gain in more knowledge, and that's one way to essentially deal with the Gettier problems. Like, just looking at a sheep in the field, yeah, I know there's a sheep in the field, but I don't know it very well. It could be a white rock, it could be anything, it could be like my little neighbor's kid who puts white sweaters on. But if I see it, and I call out to it, right, and it runs towards me, right, making sheep-like noises, right, well, now I know that there's a sheep in the field. So that's the simplest way to deal with Gettier problems. Say that they are knowledge, but they're very weak knowledge, because they all rely on very weak justifications.
Yeah, so that's why what is the most rigorous one? The one what is the one that made everyone think, oh, Gettier problems, they actually make us rethink about this whole thing? Well, because I was reading about the coin one or something. I didn't quite fully understood it.
That's the original. That's one of the original ones. It's actually kind of confusing. This is a 3-page article, the Gettier's article, and the 2 examples he uses are kind of lame. And yeah, it's kind of confusing. What is it? It's something about how it's you believe that the person who has 10 coins in his pocket will
he's got the job or something, or will have a job.
Will be the person who got the job, yeah. And this is justified by the fact that you're told that person gets the job, and then you're told by someone else that he gets a job. I forget.
It's like whoever gets told that someone's going to get a job because they've got 10 coins in their pocket. I can see it's a theoretical problem, but it's, when you try to analyze it, I'm thinking, anyway.
I like my ship one because you could say it really fast. The sheep one is usually the next one I hear. There's one more. That's kind of
the sports one is like a really common one too, right? Like you're watching some game or whatever it is, but it actually turns out to be the rerun of the game from last year, but the same team wins, right? Right? So it's true. You obviously would be justified. You just watched it happen on TV, like right in front of you, right? But it just so happens that it's like a really old TiVo recording of the exact same teams playing off against each other in the exact same game of the playoffs, and they have the exact same sort of score, or going into that. And then so it would be justified, and it is true, but it happened essentially just by fluke. So you would want to say that it's knowledge.
What about an example where someone prints off a document and doesn't pick it up straight away, then another person grabs it, drops it, or gets it, oh, that's a great document, I might keep that. But oh, whoops! I better go reprint it for the person. So the person prints it, leaves it in the printer tray, and then the person who originally comes picks it up and thought it was the original document they printed. Would that be a Gettier problem? So the person believes
they're both printing out the same document.
They both thought Yeah, both printing out the same document, but one's like not the person. The original person's picking up the document that the second person printed out, thinking it's the document they originally printed out. It will look identical because it'll essentially be a printed copy of a PDF from an article or something.
Yeah.
I mean, would it really matter in the great scheme of things anyway? But would that be the person originally thought, oh, I printed that, I'm just picking out a document I originally printed out. In fact, it's actually the document that someone else printed out because the other person thought, oh, I better not steal this document, I'll just reprint it out for someone. But they don't know who they printed it out for.
It sounds like it could be another one.
Yeah, right. Like he believes he has that. It's the same thing. Like, for example, me and Joe have the same pen, right? So we're writing with it, and we just happen to lay it down on the desk. And I accidentally pick up Joe's pen, and Joe picks up mine. But if you asked him, like if you asked Joe, you'd say, "Is that your pen?" Well, of course it's my pen. I remember buying this. I remember writing with it, right? So he has a justification, right? So you can. There's lots of things that you can do, right? So. But like the thing is, the reason why Gettier cases are an issue is because they don't want to reduce down to justification where you have sort of knowledge on a scale, right? They want knowledge to be absolute, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you keep knowledge being absolute? Say that the Gettier cases are one or the other. That's the big problem, right?
What do you mean by one or the other? Like,
well, they have to make an argument. Either the Gettier cases are knowledge or that they're not knowledge, right? So if you say the Gettier cases are knowledge, it seems to be an odd position to take, right? Because it seems to be knowledge like incidentally or accidentally, which is an odd thing, which is why most of them will deny the Gettier cases as knowledge, because it seems to be accidentally that you had knowledge. So they want to deny that. So they have to make some kind of argument. You can't argue against the true part of it because it is true. So the only thing you can deny is that there is a justification. But you have to deny the justification, and you can't deny it the way that I denied it, and you just say, well, sure, it's knowledge, but like it's a weak type of knowledge. And in that case, like I wouldn't really say that I know there's a sheep in the field just because I saw something that looked like a sheep, because there's lots of things that look like sheep, right? So I'd say, yeah, I know there's a sheep in the field, but if you said to me, like, do you really know? I'd say, yeah, like, what is really weak? You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 1. I'm like, too far away to see it, right?
Well, would you bet your house on it, sort of thing?
Right. So, but you have to be like when you talk to someone like Darwin's or any of the pre-suppers, that's not what they mean by knowledge. Like when I say I'm going to say yes, I know it, but I could be wrong. That's not what Darwin's means, right? When Darwin says he knows something, or any pre-supper, they mean it could not be otherwise. That's what knowledge means to those guys.
Yeah, that's what. Go ahead, actually.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to who was having an argument with Darwin a couple of days ago. Who was it? It was Darwin and I can't remember now. It was on one of M's Hangouts, and he was going through, you know, the problem that because like Cy says, if you don't know, if you could be wrong about anything, you just don't know nothing, and your worldview is completely useless. Right. And I'm still trying to understand why, just because we don't know, we cannot justify laws of logic, why does that make atheism completely stupid? Like we should, like, you know, because I think I asked Darwin one time, would you see a doctor who you knew was like, you know, I often want to ask Christians, would you see a surgeon who believed that the laws of logic were just an assumption? You know, or does that mean that his surgical knowledge is completely useless and invalid? You don't trust him? I mean, you know, just from a practical point of view, I don't quite get how they can say that basically all science is thrown out the window just because we assume the laws of logic.
Right. The problem is, like, with most of these people, you don't get the full argument because most people won't actually discuss it with them, and they get very upset. And Darwin's can be hard to talk to. But, like, talk to Jimmy Stevens, and you'll get the full argument. The full argument goes something like this. Yeah, of course, I'd trust my doctor. And yeah, of course, my doctor knows stuff. Because there is a God, and there are laws of logic, because there is that God. That's why I trust the doctor. He doesn't need to believe it, because he's suppressing the truth. But it's because the Christian God is real that I can believe that. Now let's take this hat off. Now I'm going to step into your world where there is no Christian God. Well, there is no laws of logic. There couldn't be a doctor. None of this stuff could make any sense. You couldn't even do science in your worldview. So from your point of view, it's complete gibberish. It only makes sense in my perspective. That's the only way because there are obviously laws of logic. The universe obviously is ordered. There obviously is cause and effect. The only thing that would make this be this way is the Christian God. Therefore, it has to be the case that the Christian God is true. Now, if you try to argue against them, the first thing they will say is something like, so wait now, you're saying to me that you don't know anything to be certain. Yeah. And the first thing is they'll say, even that, and they get you into that paradox, right? So that you have to be able to deal with that paradox. If you can't deal with that paradox, the conversation usually ends there. But I mean, that paradox holds with fundamental mathematics, right? There's a number of math theorems that basically say you'll always run into paradoxes in mathematics of that sort, right? So, like, the most simplest one is to say that you have a set and the members of a set are the sets that are not members of themselves. So that's a paradox, because either way you ring it, the set will produce a paradox. And the other famous thing is the barber problem, right? Like the barber shaves everyone in a town who doesn't shave themselves, or something that gives everyone in town a haircut. Something like that. There's a number of ways to shave it, and you produce paradoxes. But we don't throw out all of mathematics because that paradox is produced, right? We just accept the fact that there are certain ways of thinking, there are certain ways of speaking that produce paradoxical statements. Right? Like, this statement is false. We don't then throw out all language because of that. So that's just the first thing. You just have to say that, right? It's an implementation of language. Anything that references itself in the negative will tend to generate that kind of paradox. So the next thing they'll say is, assuming you can get past that, they'll say, okay, that's fine. But you're going to make some kind of argument, right? Whatever it is against my position. You're going to claim my position is false because you're making some kind of argument. But you've already just said that you can't know that your argument is correct, so why should I listen to you? Like, I know my argument is correct, right? Because of Jesus and all that. You're saying to me that you don't even know your argument is correct, but you're asking me to listen to you. Like, you should listen to me because I know my arguments are correct. Therefore, you should listen to me. But obviously, I shouldn't listen to you. That's the end game.
Yeah. Which I guess, if that's what they believe, you just got to, you just have to walk in there. You just have to separate and walk. You're not going to convince them. But I mean, it's still, so I guess basically they trust seeing the doctor because it's impossible in their worldview. A God has to be present to be able to make that doctor know what he's doing.
Yeah. Because there wouldn't be laws of logic, right? Without them, right?
Yeah. So that they cannot think the basic concept that God may not be responsible for the laws of logic is just impossible for them to believe.
Yeah.
Dang it, David. I'm about to stop. You came in at just a bad time. Yeah, I was about to stop because I'm super tired too.
Yeah, well, must be, what time is it there for you guys?
Oh, it's only 9 here, but I was up all night.
Joe, man, you have like the oddest sleeping habits. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm really tired. Yeah, I just got up.
Yeah. No. I was up all night, so I've been up the whole time, and so I'm super tired now. But yeah, I think. Yeah, all right, hang out. Sorry, David.
No, it's okay. I mean, next time.
All right, yeah. So I'm going to stop it, and I'm actually going to leave because I have to talk to some people, but you guys can still stay. Okay. So bye, YouTube people.
See you.